The tea had gone cold before I even took a sip. That happened more often lately. Not because I forgot about it, but because the house had started filling with a kind of noise that made it hard to settle. Not loud noise. My son-in-law wasn't a loud man. It was the other kind. The kind that sits behind words and makes everything feel slightly off, like a picture frame that's 1 inch too low on the wall, but no one will say it. I'm 69 years old. I've lived in this house for 31 years. I planted the hydrangeas along the front walk the spring my husband and I moved in, and every summer since they've come back blue and full without me asking them to. I know where the third porch step creaks. I know which drawer in the kitchen sticks in August when the humidity comes in. This house knows me, and I know it. That has never once been in question. Until it was. It started slowly, the way these things always do. A comment over dinner. Had I thought about whether the house was too much for one person? A foreword of an article about downsizing with dignity. My daughter, sitting across from me at my own kitchen table, tilting her head the way she'd started doing, the sympathetic tilt, like she was delivering news to someone who might not take it well. Mom, we just want to make sure you're taken care of. I smiled and passed the bread. I want to be clear about something. My daughter is not a bad person. She loves me, I believe that. But love can carry things inside it that love doesn't even know about. Ambition. Anxiety. The belief that the person you love needs to be managed. She'd married a man who was very good at managing things, and somewhere along the way, she had started seeing me as a thing that needed managing too. His name is Clifton. I'll just say this once and move on. I never disliked him. That's not what this is. He's capable, organized, and he has very firm opinions about what constitutes a sensible financial decision. He'd made a good living by those opinions, and he'd come to believe that his way of looking at money was simply the correct way, the rational way, and that people who didn't see it that way were either uninformed or sentimental. He was, I think, mostly unaware of how much he condescended to people. It came naturally to him, like breathing. The first time he mentioned the power of attorney, it was framed as a gift. We were sitting on the back porch. It was late September, still warm enough to be outside in the evenings if you had a sweater. He'd brought out a folder. He always brought folder. And he set it on the patio table between us like it was something ordinary. It's really just a precaution, he said. Everyone your age should have one. It just means that if something ever happened, a health scare, an accident, there's someone who can act on your behalf without delay. I asked him what kind of something he was anticipating. He did the chuckle. The gentle, patient chuckle that meant I'd said something a little bit simple. Nothing specific. That's the point. You want these things set up before you need them, not after. My daughter was sitting to his left, her hands around a mug of decaf, looking at the yard. She didn't look at me when he spoke. I told him I'd think about it. I took the folder inside and set it on my desk and went to bed, and I lay there for a while in the dark, listening to the house settle. That particular sound had always comforted me. That night, it didn't. In the morning, I read the document. I want to say that again because I think it matters. I read it. All of it. My husband was an engineer, and one of the things he believed in absolutely was reading what you sign. I am not an attorney. I don't have a law degree or a financial background, but I am a careful reader, and I have been for 69 years, and there's a difference between a document that protects someone and a document that transfers power away from them. This one was the second kind. It wasn't a simple medical proxy or a narrow healthcare directive. It was a durable power of attorney, broad, general, effective immediately upon signing. It would give Clifton the authority to make decisions about my finances, my property, and my living arrangements without any requirement to consult me, without any review, without any sunset date. There was a line in the middle of the third page that specifically included real estate transactions. I read that line 3 times. Then I closed the folder and I called my friend, Nadette. Nadette and I have known each other since our children were in elementary school together. She was a paralegal for 26 years before she retired, and she has a mind like a filing cabinet. Everything organized, everything accessible, nothing lost. I'd helped her through her divorce. She'd helped me through my husband's illness. We have that kind of friendship. I told her what the document said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Eloise, that is not a precaution. That is a transfer of control." I told her I knew. She asked me if I wanted her to come over. I said not yet. I had some thinking to do first. I put the folder back in the same spot on my desk. I didn't mention it to my daughter. I didn't tell Clifton I'd read it. I just let things continue the way they've been going, and I watched. What I noticed, now that I was watching, the visits had become more frequent. Clifton would stop by on weekday mornings when my daughter was at work, and he'd stand in the kitchen drinking coffee and talking about the housing market, about what the property was worth now compared to when I'd bought it, about what a smart move it would be to sell while values were high. He never asked me what I wanted. He told me what made sense, and he'd look at me with that steady patience while he said it, like he was waiting for me to catch up. One Tuesday he came by with a man I'd never met, introduced him as a financial advisor, a colleague of his. The man was very pleasant. He had a laminated packet. He sat at my kitchen table and walked me through projections and percentages, while Clifton stood near the window with his arms crossed, nodding along. I offered them coffee. I smiled at all the right moments. I asked very few questions. When they left, I sat at the table for a long time. The laminated packet was about senior living communities. Not the nursing home kind, the other kind, the places with fitness classes and restaurants and word like resort in the brochure. One of them was 45 minutes away. There was a floor plan circled in pencil, a one-bedroom. I'm 69. I garden. I drive myself everywhere I need to go. I cook dinner, and I read, and I sleep well, and I take a walk every morning before 8. There is nothing wrong with me. There has never been anything wrong with me. I sat with that for a while. Then I called Nadette again, and then I called someone else. His name is Mr. Overbeck. He is an estate attorney who was recommended to me by my doctor's wife at a dinner party 4 years ago. I'd filed his card in the little box on my desk, the one my husband gave me years ago. Dark green leather, brass clasp, and I had never needed it until now. I made an appointment for the following Wednesday morning. I told no one. When I walked into his office and sat down across from his desk and told him the whole story, the folder, the laminated packet, the Tuesday visits, the floor plan with the penciled circle, he listened without interrupting. Then he asked me a question I hadn't expected. "What do you actually want?" I told him I wanted to stay in my house. I wanted to remain in control of my own finances and my own property. I wanted to make whatever decisions needed to be made about my future myself, on my own timeline, in my own way. He nodded. He said, "Then let's make sure you're protected before anyone can take that from you." Over the next several weeks, we worked together. I won't detail everything, some of it is still private. But the short version is this. I established a revocable living trust. My home, my accounts, my assets were restructured in a way that meant no single durable power of attorney could simply override them. I updated my healthcare directive with specific, narrow parameters. I named Nadette as my successor trustee, not a family member. I did not tell anyone I had done this. I also hired a second attorney, a different firm, different specialty. I wanted 2 independent sets of eyes on what I was doing. This took about 6 weeks. I was calm during those 6 weeks. Calmer than I'd been in months, actually, because I was no longer waiting to see what would happen. I was making things happen. Quietly and carefully, in the way I'd always done things. Then came the Sunday. My daughter and Clifton came for dinner. That part was normal. We had dinner together most Sundays. I made roast chicken and the rice pilaf my daughter has always liked. We talked about ordinary things. I poured wine and asked about her work and listened. After dinner, while I was making coffee, Clifton set the folder on the kitchen table. Not a new one. The same one from September. I recognized the small coffee ring on the back cover. Mine, from when I'd set my mug on top of it the morning I'd read it. "We've been waiting on this a while," he said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation, delivered in his reasonable voice. "I think it makes sense to get it taken care of tonight." He had a pen in his hand, one of those heavy, deliberate pens that men like Clifton carry. I looked at my daughter. She was looking at the table. I poured the coffee. I set a cup in front of each of them. I sat down. "I actually have some questions," I said, "about the document." Clifton set the pen down. He made the patient face. "Of course. What are you not sure about?" "I'm not sure," I said, "that I should sign it without my attorneys present." There was a pause. "Your attorney," he said. He'd shifted slightly. "You don't really need an attorney for something this straightforward. This is standard language." "I have 2 attorneys," I said, "and they disagree with that characterization." My daughter looked up. Clifton said slowly, "You hired attorneys." "I did. Several weeks ago." I held my coffee cup with both hands. It was warm. "I'd like them here before I sign anything. I've already spoken with them about the document, and they have some concerns." The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, I could hear the hydrangeas brushing against the side of the house in the wind. 31 years, and they still came back every summer without being asked. Clifton said, "This really isn't necessary, Eloise." "Mr. Overbeck thinks it is," I said. "And so does Ms. Reinhold." I had never said their names out loud to him before. Watching his expression shift was something I will remember for a long time. He picked up the folder. He straightened the pages inside it. He capped his pen. My daughter said my name, quietly, and in her voice I could hear something that I think was relief, but she hadn't let herself feel it yet, so it was still wrapped in something else, something tighter. "We'll set something up," I said, "properly, with everyone present." The meeting happened 11 days later in Mr. Overbeck's conference room. Clifton came with the laminated packet and the folder. He had also brought, it turned out, his own attorney, someone I'd never seen, younger, who sat very still and said very little. Mr. Overbeck and Ms. Reinhold, who was a specialist in elder financial law, had reviewed the durable power of attorney document in full. They presented their findings clearly and without drama. The document, as written, was not a standard precaution. It was as broad as a general POA could be, with no limitations on real estate authority, no accountability provisions, no expiration, and no requirement for any triggering health event. It would have been effective, they explained, the moment I signed it, regardless of my capacity. Ms. Reinhold put a 1-page summary on the table. Clifton's attorney read it. He didn't say anything. Clifton said, "We can revise the language." Mr. Overbeck said, "My client has already put protections in place that make the question of revision somewhat beside the point." There was a long pause. My daughter had come to the meeting. She was sitting to my left. When Mr. Overbeck said that, she turned and looked at me. Not the sympathetic tilt, not the managing look. Just looked at me, the way she used to when she was small and she'd realized I'd known something longer than she thought I had. I didn't say anything. I just met her eyes. We didn't resolve everything in that meeting. I won't pretend we did. There were months afterward that were difficult, stiff dinners, conversations that didn't quite find their footing, a long stretch where Clifton and I were polite in the way that people are polite when they've been embarrassed. My daughter and I had some hard talks. She told me she'd known the document was broad. She told me she'd convinced herself it was still the right thing. She told me she was sorry. I believe her. What I know now that I didn't fully know before? The time to protect yourself is before anyone asks you to sign something. Not after. Not when the pen is already in someone else's hand. The trust is still in place. Ms. Reinhold reviews it with me each year. My house still has the hydrangeas. The third porch step still creaks. Nadette comes for lunch on the second Thursday of every month, and we sit at the kitchen table and drink coffee that doesn't go cold because we actually drink it. I am 69 years old. I am not a burden. I am not a liability. I am not a floor plan in a laminated packet. I'm the one who read the document. The folder is still in my desk drawer. I kept it, not out of bitterness, but because I think it's useful to hold on to proof of the moment you almost let someone else decide your life for you. What I've come to understand, looking back on all of it, is that nothing that happened was an accident. Not the slow escalation of the visits, not the laminated packet, not the pen already in Clifton's hand that Sunday evening. Each of those things followed naturally from a decision I hadn't yet made, the decision to pay attention. And once I made it, once I actually sat down and read what was in front of me, every step after that followed just as naturally in the other direction. That's how it works, I think. Not fate, not luck. Just the logical consequence of what you choose to do with what you know. I've thought a lot about what actually protected me through all of this, and it wasn't cleverness exactly. It was something quieter than that. It was honesty with myself, first. Admitting that something felt wrong before I had the language to explain why. Not telling myself I was being paranoid, not softening the edges of what I'd read to make it easier to sit with. I read the document. I said to myself, this is not what they told me it was. That took a particular kind of integrity, because the easier path was to sign it and keep the peace and believe I was being taken care of. I knew too many women my age who had taken that path. I didn't blame them. I understood the exhaustion behind it. But I also had known since I was young, really, that the moment you stop trusting your own reading of a situation is the moment you become dependent on someone else's. And I had spent 69 years building a mind that I trusted. I wasn't willing to hand that over with a signature. Nadette used to say that preparation is just respect for your future self. I've never found a better way to put it. Those 6 weeks when I was quietly working with Mr. Overbeck and Ms. Reinhold, that wasn't me being combative or suspicious or difficult. That was me taking my own life seriously enough to protect it. There's a kind of courage in that doesn't look like courage from the outside. It looks like making appointments. It looks like reading fine print. It looks like a woman sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee that's going cold because she's paying attention to something that matters. I think about the women who don't have a Nadette to call, who don't have a business card in a little green leather box, who sit across from a folder and a pen and believe what they're told because no one has ever shown them they had the right to ask a question. That's the part of this story I most want to sit with. Not the conference room, not the moment Clifton's expression shifted. Those were just outcomes. The real thing happened weeks earlier, alone at my desk, when I decided that my name on a piece of paper was worth understanding before it became someone else's authority. I'm still here. The hydrangeas came back blue again this summer.